Hello to the attendees today of the RISE Women's Leadership Summit. This has been fantastic. We congratulate, I know all I can say on behalf of our panel, we congratulate Helena and her team. Thumbs up, that's for sure. My name is Gail Lowney Alofsin. I am the moderator of today's panel. I work full-time for Newport Restaurant Group, Newport International Boat Show as Director of Corporate Partnerships and teach at the University of Rhode Island in Salve Regina. Love working with nonprofits. But today is not about Gail Lowney Alofsin. Today is about our four panelists. As the moderator, I'll be guiding the discussion of these talented, knowledgeable, and remarkable women. Okay, I'm gonna come clean. In the last session at 10 o'clock, I took notes and notes and notes from this panel that I'll post on LinkedIn tomorrow for people who weren't fortunate enough to be here. As this panel is called How to Be Supported by the Queens Around Us, Lift and Uplift, how to be supported and supported by the queens around us, I thought it'd be appropriate to open with a quote that I found on Pinterest, still looking for the source. And it's, "Be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world it was crooked." So with this, I will start with our panelists today. What we're going to do is each panelist will introduce themselves. They will have approximately 2 minutes. And within that introduction, answer the following question. And again, I will be going alphabetically. So I will start with Allie. And the first question is, that we'll all answer. You all work or volunteer in companies or organizations that, as part of their DNA, are all about lifting up girls and women. Tell us more about how you do that.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allie Curtis. I represented Rhode Island at Miss America in 2015. After I completed my term as Miss Rhode Island, I went on to graduate from Brown University with my MBA and then went on to Salve Regina for a master's in administration of justice and homeland security. Shortly thereafter, I enlisted in the Rhode Island National Guard as a human resources specialist, and then went on to become a public affairs officer and most recently commissioned as a field artillery officer. So I was the first woman in the state of Rhode Island to go into the field artillery, which is something that has been exciting and challenging and just so wonderful. Such a turn in the direction of my life. When I was Miss Rhode Island, and something that has carried on through my time with Miss America was an initiative I started called Leading Ladies, which is really focused on building the pipeline of women to run for public office. And through that work, I've worked with organizations like Running Start and Ignite, which are national organizations, nonpartisan organizations that train young women to get themselves ready to run for office, whether that's as a student government president or anything across the board. It's something that I'm very passionate about. And of course, we're going to hear a lot about the Girl Scouts today. The Girl Scouts is another one of my favorite organizations to work with. I'm a lifetime member of the Girl Scouts. I was a leading woman of distinction with our Girl Scouts of Southeastern New England. And I always say I will never say no to the Girl Scouts because I wholeheartedly believe in their mission.
Excellent. Thank you, Allie. And next we have Hillary Levy-Friedman.
Hi, I'm Hillary Levy-Friedman. In my day job, I'm a professor at Brown University. I'm trained as a sociologist, but I teach in the Department of Education, classes about after-school hours, sports, qualitative research methods, and child and social policy. I previously taught a course called Beauty Pageants in American Society. And just at the very end of the summer, my latest book came out called Here She Is, The Complicated Reign of the Beauty Pageant in America. So that's part of the reason I'm on this panel. And additionally, in my quote unquote spare time, my volunteer position is that I'm president of the Rhode Island chapter of the National Organization for Women. So we do a lot of work in the state of Rhode Island at the State House, legislative advocacy around issues like preventing violence against women in all forms, protecting women's reproductive freedom, and fighting for others as well, LGBTQ rights, ending racism, economic justice, all of those things. So that's sort of in our organization's DNA to fight for justice and equality and equity. And because this mainly is a Rhode Island crowd, I will say too, something we're involved with is voting yes on question 1, if you haven't voted already, or as you come up to vote to make sure that our name is Rhode Island, period.
Thank you. Thank you, Hillary. Next, we have Joy Gordon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joy. I'm the CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide. Dress for Success is a global nonprofit organization that started in New York City. We certainly have an office in Rhode Island, but we have 150 offices in 25 countries around the world. When we first started some 20 plus years ago, we started out as an organization that gave suits to women who needed them, with the premise that women were going on job interviews, and for her to look good and feel great, she needed to dress the part. Our organization has morphed and evolved into an organization with true wraparound services. We are as committed to keeping women employed as we are to getting them employed. And so we have a robust amount of programs focused on leadership development, health and wellness, financial literacy, you name it. We believe that if given the opportunity, any and every woman can succeed. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. The organization is 24 years old. I've been involved 23 of those years. Watch out for what you ask for. I started out as somebody who was watching the news and saw Dress for Success and thought I could donate a suit. I went from suit donor to board member in one conversation. And then from there, I left my job as an assistant district attorney in the court system in New York to work at a nonprofit that was in the basement of a church. This has been the greatest 2 decades of my life, leading this organization and being committed to seeing the success of women around the world. I've been deeply invested in women's issues, from everything from being on a corporate board of a retailer focused on plus size women clothing, to serving on the advisory board for American Airlines, Office Depot, Hyperion Books. So I'm everything about women. I've also been engaged with the startup of a giving circle focused on Black women for Black girls. And what we do in that circle is we provide support and leadership development for young girls going to college. I said earlier today, I just got assigned a young girl. She's 14 years old, a young Black girl. Because of her dynamic nature and her smarts, she advanced from junior high school straight into college. So she never went to high school, and she's attending college for her first time this fall semester. So I'm going to learn as much from her as I hope she learns from me, but I would only imagine that at some level she'll stop being my mentee and I'll be hers. And so I am all about women, uplifting women, and that's why this panel about women who rise is important to me to have this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Joy. And next, Pam Highland. I love the unstoppable behind you.
Thank you, Gail. Yes, I'm Pam Highland, CEO of Girl Scouts of Southeastern New England. We cover all of Rhode Island, 13 communities in Southeastern Mass, and Pawcatuck, Connecticut. I started my career back in '77 with the Girl Scouts, so it's been my entire career. And actually, Joy, my first CEO job with the Girl Scouts was in Schenectady, New York, in the basement of a church. So there you have it. We have similar backgrounds. Our mission is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. And, if only we could wrap up those gifts and bestow them upon our children on their birthdays, and then bingo, they would have that. But it's our job to work with adult volunteers and, of course, our staff to develop really the environment in which those gifts can thrive. So whether it's a girl earning a badge, which helps her develop her confidence, and sometimes I tell you, it's community service. I think more than anything, that's what really builds it. Because when a child or an adult recognizes that the difference that they make in the life of another person, there is nothing more powerful than that your life can make a difference in the life of someone else. So that is a hallmark of what we do. And that really comes through with our highest awards in Girl Scouting, the bronze, the silver, and the gold. Bronze and silver are probably pretty much aligned with Boy Scout Eagle Award. Our gold award takes it a step further because it's more than doing a service. It's actually identifying an issue that you feel really passionate about and then developing a project and a plan to actually address that issue. And it has to be sustainable. I'll give you one example of a local girl who I think was just fabulous in her project. She had been born, she actually lost 2 adults in her life when she was really little, a grandmother and someone else. And she said, later on, she said, every adult in her life thought, kids are resilient. They're just going to bounce right back. She said, I was a child that did not bounce back. So when she was earning her gold, she decided to write a book. She wrote it, she illustrated it, and she published it. And you can actually buy it on Amazon. And it's called The Color Blue. And it's about an elephant that is colored blue. And this elephant, she tells the story through the animal of loss and how you deal with loss. And it was just such an important book for her to write. But, there are people, there are funeral homes that are using her book now to help families and children in particular through loss. That's making a difference, and that's a sustainable difference. And that's what our girls are doing every single day. I think the challenge for all of us as adults is to share our struggles with girls too, which makes it then okay for them to work through their own. And so often I think we as adults want to at least pretend somehow we have it all together, right? The fake it till you make it. But the thing that resonates most with girls is when you can actually acknowledge when you kind of mess something up. And that's powerful for them to realize that you can mess something up and you can get beyond that. So that is really what we do. I'm also a member of Nexus, which is there's a local chapter, Providence chapter of Women in Leadership Nexus, run by Carrie Mayeski. And it's a wonderful group. And if anybody is looking beyond this RISE conference to connect with other women who lift you up, I would highly recommend Nexus. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thanks. Well, what I'm going to do for this panel is I'm going to just keep going alphabetically. And that way I won't make any Saturday Night Live errors like I did on the last one, where I asked Hillary the same question twice. Didn't we all talk about how we beat each other up? I mean, we beat ourselves up on what we do wrong instead of what we do right. So I wink as I say that. Allie, I'm going to ask you the first question, and we'll ask some other panelists this as well. Sometimes the lifting up of others happens when you see someone who was just belittled or mistreated. Please share a time that you stood up for a woman.
Well, given the environment of pageantry, things can be very competitive. And people put a whole lot of heart and soul into what they do when they're competing. I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been probably the last place contestant, and I've been the one to walk away with the crown. And there are times where I've seen other contestants, and this is indicative about pageantry. I like to say overall it's a very positive environment, but there are times where people will inherently beat up on the winner. And I've always made a point of ensuring that we are putting positive connotations out there when we're discussing anyone in the pageant realm. But I never wanted to be the kind of contestant that sits backstage and is saying, oh, well, X, Y, and Z only won because of this, that, and the other, or she wasn't deserving, or can't believe she won. And I've shut that down before. In 15 years in pageantry, it's just never something that I wanted to be a part of. I've always believed it to be a very empowering community, and I don't want any part of tearing down another woman, especially when she's just achieved something great and effectively represents the entirety of the organization and all of the contestants that are a part of that. So something I'm very passionate about behind the scenes in pageantry, and that goes for any aspect in life. You never want to be the one that people are coming to with gossip, or the one that people can turn to and say, oh yeah, we can speak poorly about this and this person will join in. So something to shut down in the workplace and beyond.
One of Oprah's quotes is, her success is not your failure, meaning not her, just another woman's success is not your failure, which is exactly what you're saying here. Hillary, please share a time that you stood up for a woman.
So, like in pageantry, politics can also be a tough place for a woman to be, well, anyone to be, but especially women. And while we've made a lot of progress, especially in Rhode Island, in terms of our elected leadership, we're still not, at half, let alone sort of what's representative of the population of those who identify as female in Rhode Island. So I've found that women tend to be attacked, women candidates, women politicians, because of how they look or their sexuality or something else that's tied to their womanhood. And so very often Rhode Island Now or the Rhode Island Now PAC will speak out and issue statements. And sometimes those are very well received, and sometimes on social media, not so much, or in person. And so, you might face repercussions, but you just know that you're speaking out on behalf of someone because it's the right thing to do.
Enjoy a time that you stood up for a woman?
I feel like I've been standing up for women since I was a child. I could really remember the first time I watched someone be bullied, and I realized that I wasn't going to be complicit in it, and I was going to be that kid who bullied the bully, right? And so just standing up for people who just didn't feel like they had a voice, or because of whatever situation or circumstance they were going through, they couldn't speak up for themselves. I've always been that person who wanted to speak up for them. And so I did that from a very early age. I think it led me to go to college to be a journalist, and then go from there to law school to be a lawyer. I've always had this edge about me that was really making sure that there was going to be justice. Whatever room I stepped in, I was going to step into the room where there's justice for all. And I've been doing that. And I feel like I've been that voice for women who really are silent. And what people like to call minorities or disadvantaged or disenfranchised or formerly this or formerly that. I read a book recently by this woman, brilliant woman. She's a venture capitalist out of San Francisco. Her name is Arlen Hamilton. Her book is called It's About Damn Time. I love how she characterized the people that she's serving, because she's focused in the VC world on women of color, and the LGBTQ plus community. And she doesn't refer to them in any sort of what I call negative terms: disenfranchised, disadvantaged. She calls them underestimated. And I think if you can just change the narrative and how you speak about people, you stand up for them. And so there's no reason to label someone something that feels heavy. And you got to put people in a position of power. And I love the fact that I think today Dress for Success is helping underestimated women. If given the opportunity, they're going to succeed. You just have to give them the opportunity. So I've been standing up and being a voice for women for my entire career. And it's a space that I'm very comfortable in.
Great. Thank you, Joy. And that sounds like an excellent book too, that we could all learn from. That book and The Color Blue. Thank you for your book suggestions. Maybe that's how we'll end on our fire round. With
There
a
you
little
go.
Pam, an opportunity that you had to lift up another woman.
I'm going to share a different story than I did in this morning's panel. It's when I was in South Carolina. I took part in a program called Leadership South Carolina. And so we went all over the state, and we're learning about a variety of things. And this session was on education. And we were in an elementary school in Myrtle Beach area. And it was interesting because we had these children on stage that were going to take us on a little tour of the school. And all of the children that were going to take us on the tour, and this is more a story not just about women, but about women of color and men of color. But they took us on this tour, and I'm thinking every one of these tour guides is white. And I'm thinking to myself, knowing where we were, I was sure that this is an integrated school because of the neighborhood that we were in. So I waited, and we got our tour, and I walked through the classes, and certainly at least half of the children in the school were African American and half white. So when we got back into the auditorium, and of course our Leadership South Carolina class was about 50 of us, and again, very integrated, probably half and half in terms of African American and white. And I thought, I've got to say something. And so I said to the teacher who was leading this, I said, I'm really curious. I noticed that the school is very integrated, and yet all of the tour guides were white. I said, can you help me understand why they were selected to be the tour guides? And, I may have embarrassed her, tried to frame it in a way that was not, But I had to point it out. And the reason I wanted to point it out is that I think sometimes when we're not the minority in the group and but we notice it. I mean, this is just something that's part of the DNA of the Girl Scouts, is that we are totally inclusive. So I've always noticed things like this. And, later on, some members from the class, thanked me for saying something, because usually it's left to the African Americans to speak up. And all I can say is that when you have the opportunity to speak up for another, when it's not your own group necessarily, but it's another group, whether it's LGBTQ or it's African American, Hispanic, or whatever group it may be, it's really important that we speak up, because it's really about all people. It's not really about one. And if we lift everybody up, then we can lift us all up. So yeah, I think that's really important for us to all try to do.
Thank you, Pam. And you're certainly lifting up. Everyone is here today.
Mm-hmm.
So our next question, and I'll start with you, Allie, is what can employers do to cultivate a culture of uplifting women in the workplace?
Well, I'm very fortunate that in the Rhode Island National Guard, we have an extraordinary equal opportunity office that focuses a great deal on women's issues, minority issues, and LGBTQ. That being said, a lot of the programming around this is about breaking down biases and identifying the biases that we all have. And then often, especially being in a male-dominated space, historically overwhelming male-dominated space, a lot of things that would never be considered. So this past summer, I was able to be a part of a training, went through a course on, it's called Gender Advising, through the Women in Peace and Security Initiative of the Department of Defense, to help integrate this kind of thinking into our planning processes, whether we are on missions or working with the communities we serve. And in that kind of vein, we're looking at how we, how our work impacts others and how we can look through a gendered lens to come up with equitable solutions. So for me, this has been a huge part of the work that I've done. I'm thankful to have some hand in it in my own workplace, but really breaking down the biases, identifying them, because so often I think, not to point a finger at men, but especially in these very male-dominated spaces, they don't often have that perspective. And by including men in this conversation as well, we're able to have more advocates and others who are with us on the same page.
Excellent. Thank you. Hillary, if I could ask you the same question, because you're in the university setting. What can employers do to cultivate a culture of uplifting women?
Well, first of all, we have to make sure that women get to the workplace, and once they're there, that they are safe and protected and that they want to stay there. So I think part of that is making sure, and the pandemic has really brought this into relief, even though it's been something that people have fought for a long time, but we need affordable and high quality childcare options, because for better or for worse, disproportionately, the share of childcare falls on women. So without childcare, you can't access education, you can't access career opportunities. So we really need that to power women's success in multiple arenas. And once you're there, we need to make sure you're safe, that you're not being sexually harassed or assaulted. So having good procedures around that is really vital for women. And additionally, we, once women are there, we need to make sure that, again, and now I just lost my train of thought, but we have to make sure that they're safe and protected, and that there is no harassment. That's really, really vital.
Enjoy.
Sorry. Yeah. So for most part, I mean, I think corporations have been kind of spinning in the buzzword of DE&I, diversity, equity and inclusion. And that leadership has to come from the top down, but it also, the voices at the very entry level also have to feel like they have a voice in the movement as well. I think, gender parity, men and women being treated equal in the workplace, same opportunities, same privilege, same pay. That's what's required in this space. Also, we've got to closing that pay gap is critical, not only because women deserve to be paid the same as men, But when you lift a woman up, you lift the entire family up. I'm not talking about single moms. I'm talking about the entire family. When I'm paid more, my household gets more. My husband has more. My children have more. And so it's not about lifting me up and not lifting someone else up. We're all in this game together. I think diversity and inclusion, there has to be targeted goals. You can't talk about it just kind of out there in the space. It's important to have a diverse workforce, have more women at the table, have more people of color. What's the goal? What's the true investment? What are you going to do to make that a reality? And then you have to stick with it, right? Realizing that in the workplace, especially in HR departments, there is unconscious bias. We talked about it a little bit up here. We talked about, doing the tour and having only kids not of color being the tour guides. I'm sure in that there was some unconscious bias, but you've got to make change, and that's how change happens. And of course, right now, with so many women working from home and still being caretakers, not only of the elderly, but of their children, employers must invest in technology to allow women to work from home so that they can continue to be paid and not step out of the workforce. That's really my greatest fear, that this She Session will pull women out of the workforce and they may not want to get back into the workforce. And so all of the miles we've traveled to get to where we are today, we have the potential to go back. And I only want us to go back if we want to go back. I don't want anybody to pull us back. And so when you wanted to create a culture really is created because it's an organism that grows. That's culture. And so I want to see this organism of culture grow within a company. And I want to see companies make real change in real time. That's what we need. And the women who come through the doors of Dress for Success need a commitment from employers that they're willing to go the long road with them to allow women into the workforce and watch them succeed. We don't need to sit at the bottom rung of the ladder. We need to climb to the top.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joy. Pam, I'll segue to you on this. I know you're very passionate about this issue.
Sure. So of course, we're mostly all women within our organization, though we do have a few good men. And I think one of the biggest things for lifting up women, especially in a not-for-profit where salaries are not what they should be, is really having people feel strongly about what they do and how they're contributing to the organization. So we're becoming a Gallup Strengths organization. We've been really fortunate to have a woman who's one of our other leading women of distinction, like Allie and Gail, who's been helping us and it's more than taking the test. It's more than taking the strengths test and identifying what your top 5 are. It's really then knowing how you then utilize those, how you apply your top 5 strengths to how you do your job. And there's more than one way to do a job. So just because somebody was really good in a job doesn't mean somebody coming in different, who has different strengths, can't be an equal performer, but just differently performing. So by focusing in on strengths, because I think for women, again, we mostly will focus on the things that we don't do well. And when we put too much energy in what we don't do well, the very things that make us strong, we lose along the way because we're not focused in on the strengths that got us where we need to be. And that's not to say that we shouldn't work on some things that we want to grow within ourselves, but not at the expense of losing our strengths. So that's what we're doing. And I'd like to do a shout out to Cindy Scabetta-Butts, who is a strengths coach. And she's the one that's helping us through that. And if she's listening, thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Pam. All right, this question I'm going to ask 2 of you. And I'm going to start with Hillary. The lifting up of others is more often than not something that might be seen as a small gesture, but we know that adage, there are no little things. When has a small gesture made a huge impact in your life?
Well, when I was 18, I left the Midwest where I'd grown up and I came to New England for college, which was basically a whole new world to me in multiple ways. And my first semester of college, I was excited to be there, but I didn't know exactly what I was doing or where this new journey would lead me. And I ended up taking a class that I discovered called social stratification. And it was the first sociology class I had ever done. And in fact, I'd never heard the word sociology before. I wasn't even quite sure what it was until I was 18 and in that class. But at the end of the class, on my final paper, which I wrote about blue jeans and the little black dress and how the evolution of both, what that said about social class and gender norms and all of those things, actually, that I still think and talk about. The teaching assistant for the class wrote at the end of the paper, you're really good at this. You should consider sociology. And, when you aren't quite sure where you belong or where you fit in, or if you're in the right place, when someone gives you a small compliment or words like that, it means so much to you. So I ended up taking another sociology class the next semester and declaring my concentration in sociology. And here I am, a professional sociologist now. So clearly those few words made such a difference in my life. And I've been able to tell her what difference she made in my life as well, which is pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you, Hillary. And Allie, a small gesture that made a big difference?
Yes, so I had been competing at Miss New York, and here's an example of a pageant where I was really just a crash and burn. But this woman was tweeting at me during the pageant saying, I need to meet you after the pageant. We need to speak. We need to speak. And I always say I won at this pageant because I made this connection. A former Miss Vermont by the name of Caroline Bright hunted me down after this pageant, and we sat in the lobby of the hotel and talked about everything within politics because she was a former candidate. And I had told her, I always grew up thinking I was going to run for office one day. And I've had the worst experience. I was a student body vice president and president in college, and I was working through some really tough lessons in leadership. And I had taken a bit of a beating. And I said to her, I really think I want to be a campaign manager. I don't want to run for office myself. I'm kind of hurting after putting myself out there. And she said, Allie, you have already weathered the storm. You have already taken a hit, and you know you can survive. And if you don't jump back in the game, what does that say to other women? And that's something that stuck with me. I did actually end up becoming her campaign manager in her 2016 race for state legislature, which was a phenomenal experience. But having those words really helped me work through some difficult things that I was going through. And it gave me the perspective that just because I've been in a difficult spot doesn't mean that I'm damaged. It doesn't mean that I'm not capable of putting myself out there. And in fact, I really have a moral obligation to do so, not for myself, but on behalf of other women.
Excellent. Thank you. That's an excellent example. Joy, I'm going to switch gears and ask you a question that you answered so articulately in the last one. This question's for you and Pam. So I'll start with you. What are some misconceptions about the notion of uplifting women and girls? Because when I told people I was doing this panel, I got a lot of pushback from men and women. What about everyone? Why aren't we uplifting everyone? What about men? Would you like to have the men's summit of, New York City? So I'm like, okay, calm down. It's about lifting up everyone. But what are some misconceptions about the notions of uplifting women and girls?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest misconception is exactly what you're speaking to. When people hear you talk about women's issues and women's affinity networks, it's at the detriment of men, right? It's by lifting her up, you're saying that we're going to take her and put her on top of all the men, and she wins and the men don't. The reality is that the men want, in many cases, women to succeed. There are great men out there, the majority of which are just great men. Men want to see their daughters succeed. Men want to see their daughters in the workplace thriving and striving. They want to see them have pay equity. They want to see them get the same chances as their male counterpart. That's what men want. So they don't want women to succeed so that men can't succeed. They really want to see both succeed at the same time. Men also, they want work-life balance just like women. When a man's life is unbalanced, it creates conflict at home. It creates stress in the household. I like to tell my husband that happy wife is a happy life. So you want to keep me happy, so you're happy. And men really want the same as women do. Some men want to be stay-at-home dads. And I think that's beautiful. I think that if you have an opportunity to raise your children the way women have been raising children for hundreds of years, given the opportunity, that's a gift to children. And so if we can create this balance and opportunity for women, then men win alongside of us. It's not just about lifting one gender up at the disadvantage of another. When you lift her up, when she wins, we all win. I said it earlier, when I'm paid the same as my male counterpart, my household is richer. I'm happier. My kids go to better schools. We live in better neighborhoods. And so it's the responsibility of us all to make sure that we are equal and that we lift women up so that they have the same opportunities that men do.
Great. Thank you, Joy. And Pam, misconceptions?
Yeah, I think another misconception is that the women who are trying to lift others up are just the bleeding heart liberals. And it shouldn't be political. All women need to be lifting up all women. I think one of the things that we are struggling with as a nation right now is we can't have civil discourse. And that worries me very much. For the nation, politically, everything has become political. And I think women have the ability even more than men to raise up conversations that are strong and they're positive, and that we're seeking to understand one another rather than to tear each other down. And I worry so much that that's not happening. I see friends of mine that are losing friends of theirs, families that are being split apart because of politics. I see it within my own, and it frightens me. And it's because we can't seem to have conversations. And there's no reason why we can't. I shouldn't be trying to convince you to my point of view. That should not be the goal. There's a wonderful woman in Syracuse, and I wish we could get her here. I've actually recommended her for some of these panels, and her name is Sally Roche Wagner. And she is a remarkable woman who is really all about women's rights. But she's received grants to do this very thing, to have conversations where you're actually putting two women in a room, or two men in a room, or a man and a woman who have very differing views about something. And again, the only goal is that we've listened intently. So at the end of the conversation, if Hillary and I are on opposite sides, I can share back to Hillary, this is what I hear you saying. And Hillary can say back to me, and Pam, this is what I hear what you're saying. And really, that's what we should be doing, seeking to understand, not to seek to tear apart. So.
Thank you, Pam. Well, Hillary, I'm turning to you now that we'll go right next to you. Pam led you into that. What is one thing you learned the hard way?
Oh my goodness. Okay, let me think about this for a second.
I'm thinking of a lot myself.
Well, I would say the first thing that comes to mind, just because I've gone through it so recently, is that the hardest thing I've ever done, was this particular book, Here She Is, and getting it done, and finding ways to write when I have two small children. This hasn't come up yet, but my mother's a former Miss America. She was Miss America 1970. So grappling with those sort of relationships in my mind. And so that's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's a very solitary thing to write a book. And I knew that from graduate school because I had done that and for my dissertation, but because I was at a different point in my life, that felt different. And it was really, you're closing certain doors in order to make sure you have the time to do it. And so that was good because it reminded me we can do lots of different things in our lives. And there are different periods in our life, and, they ebb and flow. But that's one thing I sort of learned the hard way, is that you do have to be alone sometimes, and you have to be like calm and peaceful with that too.
And I just want to ask you, isn't Allie quoted in your book?
Yes. And the person she just mentioned, Caroline Bright, who ran for office, I have a chapter on pageantry and politics, and both of them are quoted there.
Allie, we won't put you to the test to see if you remember your quote there. You remember it off the top of your head?
I know I talked about my my scholarships because I'd been given a full ride scholarship to Salve Regina and a sizable scholarship for my graduate education at Brown. That was one of the great things about pageantry, and people don't often see that. One of the reasons why you should check out Hillary's book.
Excellent. Joy, what is one thing you've learned the hard way?
You know, I think one thing I've learned the hard way is to, forgive yourself. I think as a working mom, sometimes you are your biggest critic, right? And I've had a career for the past 20 years that requires me to almost be gone 2 days out of every week, out of every work week. With so many offices, I travel around the globe. Sometimes I'm gone for a full week. Sometimes I'm gone for a couple days out of the week. And I've missed different things in my children's lives. And I think I was probably, I was literally, beating myself up for many years, worrying about, how my kids were going to show up in the world and whether or not me being there, like other mothers, whether or not that was going to be harmful to them. I've learned to, one, forgive yourself. I've learned that, your kids, they learn from you. They watch you. They mirror you. And as long as you're good to yourself and good to them, then they will be the kind of kids that you have always wanted to raise. And so I'm watching my two children soar now. And, I'm much kinder to myself today, but I had to learn it the hard way. I was not forgiving of myself for not being there many times for my kids as I traveled, and it looked like I might have been putting my career first. And I was really doing the best I could with what I knew. And I've learned to forgive myself and realize they turned out to be some pretty good kids. So pretty good adults, I should say. And so you got to learn to forgive yourself sometimes.
Joy, do you have daughters, sons?
I have both. I have a daughter and a son.
Okay, great. And Hillary, we didn't ask you when you mentioned your children.
I have two boys, so I always joke. I'm only daughter, only child, only daughter, a single mom who was Miss America, who all she did was beauty stuff. I went to all girls school for 8 years. I'm super into all the women's stuff, and I grew 2 penises. It's like really confusing to me, but I did it. So, and they're awesome. So it's okay.
Now, are they home with you? Are you homeschooling while you're working? Like, do you have
Well, I was in the spring, but they are in school like literally right now, and they've been in school since like September 10th. So that's been great.
Okay. I referenced both of you because you mentioned children on that. Yeah. Pam, something you learned the hard way.
Well, before I answer that, I think maybe your 2 boys could be on the Men Who Get It panel in 15 years. Yeah. Okay. So what I learned the hard way is you have to have a group of people that you can totally trust. I think I've learned the hard way that sometimes I'm very trusting. So I have found that over the years, there have been times when I've shared in confidence information with people that did not hold the confidence. And that is a very hard lesson to learn. And then all you can do at that point is to totally own your truth in that. So if it's gone out to other folks, then you just have to own your truth in whatever that was. The other thing I think that's really important is to be honest with yourself and with others, because I think, again, as women, we don't want to hurt people's feelings. So we tend to stuff it, and then we get upset, and then it grows and it grows and it grows. And it just really hurts the culture of an organization. I actually developed a little tool because, feedback, what do they say? Feedback is a gift. So my thought about feedback is that it's a gift when it's direct to you. When somebody has the courage to talk with you directly, it's a gift. And when they know how to share that feedback in a constructive, positive way, it's a gift. It is not a gift when it's an anonymous letter to somebody. That is not a gift. That is mean-spirited, it's hurtful, and it happens within organizations more probably often than we would know. And we have to begin to be honest and open and be able to share our truth. because when you're not sharing it directly with somebody, you're sharing it with somebody else. So sometimes you can get feedback and it comes through somebody else, but it's not through the person that has the issue with you. So if we, again, if I could teach girls something, it would be to own their own truth and not to talk about it with other people and go over and skirt an issue, but to own their truth.
I'm writing that one down, Pam. I love that. Own your truth. You're on to something with the Men Who Get It panel. But why are we going to wait 15 years? We just had the young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
You should talk to Helena. She has 2 young boys as well. Two young men, I should say. I've seen them. They've come on the Zoom calls when we've talked and said hi. She's like, come over here and say hello to Gail. And you know,
the panels have been great in the past, and the one today I listened in on as well. So there really are men in our community who really do get it. I think I'd like to think that we recruit a lot of them to our board. The men in our board are men who get it. And yeah, we just have to, you're raising the next generation, Hillary, of the men who get it.
But I'm going to propose to Helena that next year, if she's open to this, doing a Men Who Get It, young men.
Oh, young men.
I should say, sorry, propose not to Hillary. I'm going to propose that to Helena, because she's got lovely sons. Hillary got lovely sons.
That's true.
With the 4 of them. How wonderful would that be? Love that. Okay. So we're going to start our quick fire round now, where you answer really quickly, or as quick as you can, because we have 10 minutes left. Why does it go so fast? You're also fascinating. So here's our first question on quickfire, and I'm going to start with Allie and then go alphabetically. How can we encourage women of all ages to make them stronger and more confident, especially in controlling their life? Come on, stand tall.
Lean into your self-doubt. So I say this because there have been so many times in my life, and I get this all the time, where they're like, you're so confident. Where do you get your confidence from? It's not that I don't doubt myself. I doubt myself every day of the week. There are so many times that I have felt I am not good enough, I'm not capable enough, what have you. And when I channel that self-doubt, when I really examine where that self-doubt is coming from, I work to counteract that. I look at shortcomings or things that I perceive to be shortcomings, and I work through that. So whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is that you want, whatever is holding you back from reaching your full potential or going after that big, scary dream, lean into that self-doubt and find what you can do to circumvent that.
There is a woman in Newport, Rhode Island named Muriel. Some of you may know her. She had Muriel's Restaurant. And when at 69 years old, she picked up a paintbrush and started painting. Did 4 children's books called Puma the Cat. They're great, sold at the mansion, sold at different gift stores. 3 cookbooks. She's incredible, and won the chowder championships around the world. So at 69 years old, and she's still, I want to say Muriel's close to 90 now, and she will still speak. Like she always says, I want to come to your class and do a motivational speech to tell these young ladies and men they can do anything. So we're never too old. So next I will go to Hillary on encouraging women.
I think the main thing is to just know that you are the author of your own story. Every person is unique and has their own story, and you can control the narrative of your life. And there'll be ups and downs and plot twists, but still, you author your own story.
Joy?
Yeah, I think we all can find women who go through challenges in their life. And I think what I would say to any woman who's struggling and who needs another dose of confidence is you got to love yourself first. You got to put yourself first. You're number one. You can't lift other people up if you can't get yourself up off the ground first. And so sometimes you do feel broken. Sometimes you feel beat up. And sometimes you drop to the ground, to your knees, you cry, you weep, but you must pull yourself up. You must find love in yourself. You must find that confidence. You got to be bold. You got to be strong. You got to find courage. And you got to see the success, and sometimes in what looks like failure. There's success there. Like what we're all going through right now with COVID-19, like there's a silver lining here. You've got to figure out what this silver lining is for you, and how to take the challenge out of this and make the opportunity. So, and that you do by putting yourself first. Because when you're good and you're well and you're healthy and you're strong, then everyone around you will be better for it.
And Pam. Whoops, Pam, you're still muted.
One of the Girl Scout leadership challenges that we have is called It's Your Story, Tell It. And it's really in Dove actually sponsors that for the organization, but it really is that you are the storyteller of your own story, and don't let other people define you is really the gist of it. And I think that that is such a critical piece for people to remember. I think it's also understanding your story. I had a Girl Scout once. She was probably a junior in high school, and she just was comparing herself, as we often do, to others. And she was growing up in a single parent household and could not go to an Ivy League school. And she thought that she would never go as far in life as her peers who had means. And I said to her, but you've got something they don't have. And she looked at me and I said, you've got resilience. And again, she looked at me and I said, sometimes when you don't have everything going for you, often those that are most likely to succeed are not the ones who do, because they never fell down and they never knew how to get up. So I think that the other thing is we need to think about the things that we think are holding us back. And those very things may be the ones that actually cause us to thrive, because we had to get back up or lean in. I guess it's kind of like your message, right? Is to lean into the things that you think are holding you back.
Okay, next question, real quick, 2-sentence answers, 1 or 2 sentence answers. And I'll start with Allie again. Advice to your younger self.
Advice to my younger self, just do it.
Perfect. Okay, Hillary.
That your choice of partner is probably the most consequential decision that you'll make.
Joy.
Integrity, it's about what people say about you when you're not in the room. So show up, have character, have integrity. What you say you're going to do it. That's what people want to see in everyone.
In Pam.
Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself.
In final question, starting with Allie again. Do you like this alphabetical? Okay. Our very final question. How do you start your day?
Start my day with a run or a ride on my Peloton. Gets me up, gets me moving, makes me feel productive before the rest of the day has even started.
Hillary?
I know this is really bad, but I grab my phone and I start reading the news and catching up on email. And then my new part of my morning ritual is taking my kid's temperature and reporting it to the school every single morning.
And there is no bad. It's what works for you. If this is jumpstarting your day, that's what works for you. Joy.
Meditation, prayer, just silence, just reflecting on the day before and the day of, and even the next day. But just being silent in it and just allowing it to come to me without driving toward it.
Pam,
on my best days, I started off with a walk, and it just clears everything for me. I feel like I have more energy for the day. The nice thing, though, about working from home on many days is that you can, when you have early morning meetings, you can fit it in during the day sometimes. But walking's important to me.
I'm sneaking in one more question. This is the extra question. The other panel didn't get it, the morning panel. Allie, what makes you laugh?
What makes me laugh? I love female comics. So I've been really big into female comics on Netflix lately.
Okay. Hillary?
I gotta say, my kids are characters, and I'm again raising them to be their own unique people in the world and be weird, embrace their weirdness, and they definitely make me laugh every day.
Joy?
My mom, she's she's 80 plus years old, but she's the funniest person I know. And she's on TikTok and I'm not. So she sends me the wildest things every day to look at throughout the day. And then she'll text me or call me and say, did you just look at that TikTok video? I'm like, Mom, I'm working, okay? And they're always the funniest things. And it gives me a moment of levity and laughter. And just the fact that I have her still in my life, I'm grateful and I get to laugh with her every single day.
So I don't have children of my own, but my nieces and nephews bring me the most joy, and their children. But like Joy, my dad is 92 years old. He is in a nursing home right now. He has dementia. But I tell you, of course, I haven't been able to see him quite as much during this whole COVID thing, but I laugh more when I am with him. And those 20-minute visits I now get at the nursing home, he brings joy to everybody. I think the reason he had COVID, he got through it. And I believe that the reason he got through it is because he was bringing joy to everybody in the nursing home, and they needed him. I think the healthcare workers needed him. So I'm a very lucky girl that I grew up with such a loving, fun dad.
Yes, you are. And I know we gave plugs to 2 books. We gave It's About Damn Time in the color blue, but Hillary, we've got Here She Is out, and this has been your labor of love. We've got 1 minute, so you can share why we need to read this book. I love it back there.
Here it is. This is really the story of American feminism using beauty pageants to tell that story. Starts in the 1840s with Seneca Falls and P.T. Barnum and his beauty contest and baby contests, and goes up to the present day of Me Too and Donald Trump owning Miss USA and Miss Universe and changes in Miss America and everything in between. So it's really the story of what's happened to American women over the past 170 years.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here today. Emily, I want to thank you for being behind the scenes. You're like the great Oz. Helena, thanks again for the conference. And I did get a text from Emily saying, Helena is going to think, yes, I'm doing my reaction here. Helena, really consider that the young men who get it panel. Let's get these young men started early like you have with your sons and she has with hers. So, and I'm sure, Pam, your nephews, they get it as well. And Joy, we know your son gets it. Allie, for anyone who's around you, they better get it, right? You're just remarkable, all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Emily.